We love Earth Day, but our planet is too big for just one day. That's why this October 22nd, we're celebrating a second Earth Day. The November elections are one of the most critical times for our little blue dot. That's when we'll vote to seriously address climate change, or we'll put it off for 2 more years. For many people and species, the latter is not an option. So this October, celebrate Earth Day 2.0 by bringing climate to the election conversation. Let's get every candidate on the record for climate action. Let's get every citizen to vote like the Earth depends on it. Let's put people in office who will choose planet over party, people over power, and long-term prosperity over short-term gains. You are Earth's voice. Let's make sure you're heard.
By holding this event, we wanted to give constituents an opportunity to demonstrate their concern for the environment and its future, and allow candidates to share their positions on these most important issues. The idea for the forum originated in Fresno, and the intent was to hear from congressional candidates running for office in districts relevant to Fresno County. As you may know, 5 of the newly drawn United States congressional districts up for grabs in the upcoming election touch Fresno County. These are Districts 5, 13, 20, 21, and 22, spanning the San Joaquin Valley and the foothills from Bakersfield in the south to Sacramento in the north. Because of this, and because we recognize that environmental issues are often local and regional in nature, we attempted to include the Democratic and Republican candidates from all 5 districts as participants in the forum. All 10 candidates were invited, but some were not able to attend. We thank them for considering our invitation and hope that they have an eye towards a healthy and sustainable future. Today, moderating today's forum is Juanita Stevenson, executive producer at Education Matters and an accomplished local media personality and journalist. I will now ask Juanita to describe the format for today's forum and introduce the candidates. Juanita?
Thank you, Manu. My name is Juanita Stevenson, and I am delighted to be the moderator of today's forum. I want to thank all of you who are joining us for this important candidates forum addressing environmental issues. The format for today's forum will be as follows. I will first introduce all participating candidates, and following this, each candidate will be allowed to give an opening statement if they wish. I will address the candidates each using their preferred titles, such as Mr. or Ms., but not by any professional designation. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. A timer will be visible to all, including the candidates and the audience. I ask that candidates not exceed their allotted time. I don't want to interrupt you, but I will. I will ask a list of predetermined questions to each of the candidates, which have been previously provided to those in attendance. We will pose the first questions to the candidates whose last name is first alphabetically, and will rotate, allowing each candidate to have an opportunity to be first to answer. Each candidate will also have 90 seconds for their questions. Candidates will be muted when it is not their turn to speak. We have asked the candidates to direct all responses to me as the moderator and not to each other. This is a forum and not a debate. We also have asked the candidates to remain on camera for the duration of the forum. We will allow the audience members to ask questions by using the Q&A feature on the Zoom application, time permitting. Manu will sort through these questions and will pose them to the candidates. Now let's go to introducing you to each of the participating candidates. Joining us today is Marisa Wood, a Democrat. She is running to represent the 20th Congressional District, which is the Bakersfield area. She is a public school teacher, mother, and grandmother, and she has spent the last 20 years serving the Bakersfield community. Also joining us is Michael Maher, Republican, running for the newly drawn 21st Congressional District. Mr. Maher is an aviation business owner, veteran, and former FBI agent. He grew up in Tulare, and he's married. He and his wife have 2 children. And also joining us is Mike Barkley, a Democrat. He is running for a seat in Congressional District 5. He's a Navy veteran and a lawyer, and he lives in Manteca, California. I would also like to add that we extended an invitation to all candidates running for office in Districts 5, 13, 20, 21, and 22 to participate in this forum. We are grateful for the participation of Mrs. Wood, Mr. Maher, and Mr. Barkley. Now, each candidate will now give their opening statement. You will have 90 seconds, and we will begin with Mr. Maher.
Thank you for having me here. I truly appreciate the opportunity to share about my background. Are you able to hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here, and thank you actually for hosting this opportunity for congressional candidates to come out and speak about our climate and what we can do for that. As was introduced, I'm a former FBI special agent, a Navy veteran. I did nuclear power production in the U.S. Navy. Actually was involved in construction, building wastewater and water treatment plants throughout the Central Valley. And my family has been farming through the Central Valley for generations. And it is an extremely important topic that we're discussing here today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the other candidates are talking about, and also how we can continue to work together to solve these climate issues.
Thank you. Now we will have Mrs. Wood give her opening statement.
There we go. Sorry about that. My name is Marisa Wood, and I am a candidate in CD20 challenging Kevin McCarthy. I'm running because I believe that integrity matters. I believe that service matters. I believe that community matters. And I believe I'm not alone in feeling that there's so much more that we share, that we have in common, than what separates us. And so I'm running to be the voice of the Valley, the voice for climate change. And, you know, as a teacher, I tell my students every day, be the one to stand up to the bully. And now I'm being called to do just that. I am ready and prepared to stand up to career politician Kevin McCarthy and to be your voice. I am a proponent of climate, clean energy solutions. I have 2 perfect grandchildren. I apologize to any of you who have grandchildren, but mine are the best. And there is nothing I would not do in order to ensure they have a safe, clean, thriving planet to grow into. So I look forward to today. I thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak with you here today and sharing my goals and making sure we have a clean, safe environment and planet to grow into.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Now we will have Mr. Barkley.
Am I on?
Yep.
My name is Mike Barkley. I'm a lawyer and an inactive CPA, a computer programmer. I have a small business I started in 1972, which is doing pretty well and paying for a lot of this. I am a Navy veteran. I grew up in the Central Valley and the East Bay. I own a ranch with my brother 40 miles west of Chico out in the hills, parts of which have been in the family since the 1850s. I see my opponent is not here, and that's understandably. He's living up to his reputation of never showing up. On your pre-selected questions, I'm not an expert in some of these areas, so I'm going to do a lot of what I do, which is to listen to you, and especially the Sustainability Club, because you're possibly much further along on this understanding road than I am. And I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Barkley. We appreciate it. Now we will begin with our questions. Again, you will have 90 seconds, and the timer should be visible to all of you. Again, this is a forum, not a debate, so we ask the candidates to direct their responses to the moderator. And we will begin with you, Mrs. Wood, for the first question. Like the COVID-19 pandemic and current economic woes, experts say that climate change will impact minorities, small business owners, the elderly, and disadvantaged more harshly. What proposals would you support to address issues of economic justice so that vulnerable groups can cope with the predicted challenges?
Apologize, got to work that mute system again. Again, thank you for that question. And as a teacher, I understand that my most powerful tool in classroom management and just reaching my students, reaching academic success, is providing them with incentives and the support they need in order to meet that success. And that's what I would do, especially the school district I teach in is a district where 88% of my students receive free and reduced lunch. So I see this every single day, and I've been advocating for them as well. I look for giving rebates to folks who are in need. I also look towards giving incentives to companies and to workers to make their businesses COVID friendly and to move forward to make that playing field equitable. So again, my focus will always be on rebates and incentivizing, making sure that we have the supports in place to move these folks forward. That's such a big part of the issue. It's not that folks don't want to succeed. It's just that they need the supports in order to get there. Folks don't want a handout. They just want a hand.
Now to you, Mr. Maher. Again, the question, what proposals would you support to address issues of economic justice so that vulnerable groups can cope with the predicted challenges of climate change?
Thank you for the question. One thing I would say, it's not just the issues of climate change and COVID-19 that are disproportionately affecting these groups. It's many other issues. These groups are continually affected by numerous issues, more than that. And what we can do, especially in Congress, to address this is immediately alleviating some of the pain on the economic side, and also providing better opportunity and better access so these communities aren't disproportionately affected. And that is through a lot of the policies that are already publicly talked about, and even what CCL is already speaking about, and doing them in a responsible and pragmatic way that actually results in solutions that benefit these communities.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Now to you, Mr. Barkley.
Well, if we solve the climate change problem for everyone, we solve it for these specifically listed disadvantaged communities. So that's what we need to do. Just to take one issue, homelessness and the soaring cost of housing, Congress did that. 1986, Congress passed the Tax Reform Act, and that caused the construction of apartments to fall off a cliff. A few years later, the savings and loan industry had serious problems. They were bulldozing brand new apartment complexes of 250 units or more in Texas, and Congress did that. In 1998, they passed the Faircloth Amendment, which put a cap on the total number of subsidized housing units. You could build more units, but you had to tear some down in order to make that work. And at the same time, they cut the subsidized housing funding. In 2008, the regulatory response to the housing crisis that caused the recession, in that regulatory response, they stopped the availability of subprime loans. So we are missing 30 years of apartments, 20 years of subsidized housing, and 10 years of low-income loans. About the only thing Congress hasn't outlawed is tents and sleeping bags, which is why we see them all over. My opponent on May 27th at the debate on TV said that he doesn't believe in subsidies, so he'd just rather see tents and sleeping bags.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barkley. Now to our second questions. And Mr. Barkley, since your name starts with a B, you will be up first. Developing the valley's ability to produce clean energy can boost the local economy and provide good jobs. What programs and legislation do you support to promote the use of solar and other renewable technologies in the San Joaquin Valley?
I support any of those programs that will work, and I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you're going to benefit from that, so we go to you.
Wonderful. Well, this is an issue that I'm already involved in pre and before running for Congress. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, I am. I'm fine. Go ahead.
So this is an issue I've been actually working on for some time. I brought up a company called Waste Fuel, which is NetJets. Berkshire Hathaway-based NetJets bought 100 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuel. And we're able to take dairy waste and turn it into sustainable aviation fuel. A group I work with and advise another company called Yosemite Clean Energy that's taking wood waste and turning it into renewable natural gas and hydrogen fuel. Both these companies are members of the Sustainable Markets Initiative with King Charles. So I've been happy to be at the forefront of a lot of these and actually bringing them here to our valley as a businessman and seeing them move forward. And that's really exciting because the communities that we just spoke about in the first question are the ones that are going to be able to benefit from that. These are real jobs focused on sustainable solutions for our future. And I'm already happy to be working with the leaders globally on this issue. And so this isn't a partisan issue. I know I'm the only Republican here in this, but this is an issue for you, me, our community, and our children. And we have to work together on this issue to be able to make it actually move forward. We have to get Republican support and we have to get the Democrat support. So I'm excited to be able to do this in a way that is going to be able to be implemented and actually deliver solutions and real jobs. And last, I'll just have,
unfortunately, your 90 seconds is up, and maybe you'll get time to talk about that a little bit more. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Now we go to Mrs. Wood.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I ready to go? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm a firm believer in ingenuity and the grit of folks here in the Central Valley. We have so much of the infrastructure already in place. And I agree with Mr. Mayor. This is a problem we all need to come together on. And if we bring everyone to the table, we can provide. We have, like I said, we have the skilled labor. We have the infrastructure in place. The Central Valley, my CD20, we can be leaders, not just in the state, but in the country and in the world in terms of flipping our energy to renewable, clean energy sources. I know we can do that. We can do that through job training programs. We can make sure that folks are even though they might be being displaced from the fossil fuel industry, as long as we have training programs to move them forward and ensure that they have a position in the clean energy solutions, this is absolutely something we can do and something we can lead the way on. But again, it brings everyone to the table, and we all have to be willing to put our best ideas and creativity forward to handle this solution. And I know we can do it. It will be thoughtful, intentional, and sustainable.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Now we go to our third question, and we're going to start with Mr. Mayor. Third question. Heat waves, unpredictable rain and snowfall, along with insufficient chill time for fruits, are already affecting agriculture in the Central Valley. What actions do you think could minimize the risk to this important source of employment and food?
Thank you. That is a great question, especially with my own family being involved with farming here in the Central Valley and employing countless people. what we can do is actually invest money into our infrastructure. What we can do is be responsible with how we have water to supply our farmers and how we're able to store our water. So the ecological disaster that is going on in the Central Valley with the ground collapsing, wells collapsing, this is not just affecting farmers and food. This is affecting so many communities for clean access to drinking water, and mostly the disadvantaged communities way out proportionally. So there's so many other technologies that can bring about water and also help. And the biggest really is management in our forests, so we don't have these uncontrolled wildfires creating heat and unmanageable pollution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your answer. Now we will go to Mr. Barkley.
I read this question and I had not heard of insufficient chill time for fruits before, so thank you for bringing that up. But this answer, this question suggests the answer, and the answer is, of course, solve the climate problem, address climate change now, and get on it and stop making these long-term plans for something to do in the next decade. Do it now. Yield the rest of my time.
Okay, Mr. Barkley. Now you, Mrs. Wood.
Thank you. My husband has been in ag for all 36 years of our married life here together. So I understand the importance of agriculture to our economy, to our food security. And what Mr. Mayor said, again, he was hitting on all the key points. We have to look at where we are failing. Our water infrastructure, there are so many folks in the rural communities that don't have portable drinking water. We need to fix those systems. I believe there are 370 systems that are not working, providing 920,000 folks with insufficient drinking water. And most of them, as Mr. Mayor said, are in the low income and already challenged communities. As far as we are looking down the pike at food, a great food insecurity issue because of our water. And I also believe that we need to make sure that we are, our water boards and our water is being distributed equitably. We have some landowners who are being able to drill wells much deeper than their neighboring farms. We have 4 generational family farms that are drying up and not being able to provide the water they need to grow the crops that feed the world. So I believe there's a huge accountability piece as well. And again, we need to focus on building up that infrastructure so we get sustainable, lasting solutions.
Okay, thank you all. Now we go to our 4th question. And Mrs. Wood, you're going to be first this time.
Okay.
The San Joaquin Valley is infamous for its poor air quality and high childhood asthma rates. If you are elected, what solutions would you advocate for?
Well, this speaks close to my heart because anything that affects our students and our children is an issue of high importance for me. But I think, again, we have to look at, as I would approach any problem or any issue, we have to look at what is causing this air pollution. We know a lot of it has to do with the fossil fuel industry. Again, that's the reason we cannot wait. We cannot put off moving from our dependence on fossil fuels and moving into cleaner energy solutions. We also need to make sure that I have families, you guys, that are working 2 and 3 jobs, living in a home with another family, and still having to choose, do I put food on the table or do I take my child to the doctor? And that's not okay. We have to make sure that our families are able to provide both food and healthcare for their children, so the kids with asthma can be taken care of. Again, it's a multifaceted issue, but it comes with looking at where the problem is arising and making sure that we are attending to those issues and solving them. And we have to begin by moving away from the fossil fuels and creating the supports needed for folks to switch to electronic cars, and making sure that we have healthcare available that is quality and affordable to everyone.
Thank you. Now to you, Mr. Maher.
Thank you. So as I was just spoke, there's multiple things that lead to the asthma, but what we know, especially the people here in the Central Valley, is how the air ends up settling down towards Arvin right before the grapevine. And with this pollution, what we saw even during the COVID-19 and with this pandemic, when the transportation industry went down, the air was cleaner, people could see the mountains. And so there is that correlation there. There's no one can deny that. And so how can we responsibly transition to electric vehicles or alternative fuel sources in a manner that also doesn't cripple the economy? And so we already lead here in California on every standard for leading in wages, leading in food safety, leading in employee safety, and we need to make sure that we're doing it in a pragmatic way to meet our targeted goals, and in a way that's going to also continue to have the jobs here, so we don't lose and greatly impact, frankly, our most vulnerable communities. So I'm excited to deal with that because that's my background, and I have a history of already dealing with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maher. Appreciate your answer. Now to you, Mr. Barkley.
Much of this is part of the question 6 below, but if we do not solve climate change, this will solve itself, because the sea level will rise 260 feet, and we will have an inland sea from Lemoore to Red Bluff, and we will have waterfront property with sea breezes and no more air pollution. And that's not quite what we want.
Okay, thank you. On to our question number 5. And Mr. Maher, you will be first up. The question: many solutions have been proposed to combat the looming climate crisis, such as decreasing the amount of food going into landfills, developing renewable energy, putting a price on carbon, and reforming land management practices. Which strategies do you favor most to deal with the changing climate, and why?
So I would like to split the pie on this. I think we need to be focusing on, I tell people I can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can focus on bringing all of these things about, especially here with in the Central Valley. How do we keep the dairy industry alive? How do we keep farming alive? Well, the technologies I'm already involved in is taking wood, turning it into renewable natural gas and hydrogen fuel. Also with waste fuel, taking actual municipal waste and turning it into fuels that power our future. These are real technologies that exist, that are already in operation. And so we need to fast track them here in the Valley, and also be able to provide those in trucking, those in our transport and logistics, the tax breaks or credits, so that they can continue to afford to operate at these higher priced fuels. Otherwise, what we're going to see is these companies leaving and going into Arizona and going into other states that do not have the same focus on solving this issue, and just driving their trucks right into California and eliminating all of the savings that we've just accomplished. So it's working together and actually delivering on the technology that we already have, so it's implemented in a smart and strategic manner.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Woods?
This is a multifaceted issue. I do support a tax on the carbon emissions. I also support incentives, again, for corporations to lead the way. We want them to start moving towards these clean energy solutions. We need to make sure we're offering incentives and credits to make sure that the all of the systems in place can continue to thrive and do so efficiently and economically. We always want to keep the focus on keeping people working, making sure that we have sustainable, thoughtful, and intentional solutions. And like I said, I believe that we have to all come together. I am always approaching issues from an education standpoint. I understand that I have to bring the smartest minds and the brightest minds all together to provide me with the information so we can make sure that we are moving forward again with sustainable solutions that also keep our folks working and keep our folks making money.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barkley?
The 4 specific strategies that are mentioned under question number 5, we're already doing, but what we need to do is accelerate our efforts on those and every other climate change challenge that we have addressed. Mostly what we do is we talk about it and then we stall, and we have to change that philosophy. One other thing that we need to do, which should have been part of number 4, we need to mostly eliminate combustion in California, and move from that to solar and wind and so on, and that will eliminate a lot of the problem. And I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. We move on to question number 6. We're going through these at a nice pace. The impacts of climate change are accelerating with fires, drought, and the rise of sea levels that could have significant impact on our valley. What steps should Congress take to prepare for the enormous adaptations needed to protect the lives and property of residents in the district and elsewhere who are threatened? And we're going to start with Mr. Barkley.
Okay, I need about an hour for this one.
Well, we can give you 90 seconds.
The way we're going, the first thing Congress needs to do is commissions planning to build levees and dams across the Golden Gate or Carquinez Strait, because otherwise we're going to have an inland ocean and all of this will be irrelevant. Beyond that, I have a water plan on my website taken from a 1966 Army Corps of Engineers report, which is about that thick, plus several state reports. It'll add 43 million acre feet of additional storage. It will solve the long-term flooding risk in California and provide enough water to get through every drought and so on, plus give us the water to market to the other 6 states that are on the Colorado River system and northern Mexico. This is the kind of thing that Congress needs to do now. It needs to address these possible plans. It needs to draft reports and draft the plans to get them ready. We need to adopt sweeping plans to reduce the wildfire risk and improving casualty and liability insurance for the mountain areas. And like I said, beyond that, if you have an hour or two, we can discuss this.
Thank you very much. Now we go to Mrs. Wood.
Right. I think the key words in what you were saying was action. Congress needs to act. We need to stop playing the partisan games that prevent us from taking meaningful action. We did begin meaningful action when we took a bipartisan stance, and that's what needs to happen. It needs to be a priority for us. And again, I would want to bring everyone to the table, bring all stakeholders to the table so we can create these sustainable, intentional programs that will prevent the loss of land, and we can work with deforestation, all of that. We need to make sure that we are taking action. It will always be a priority for me that we get this done and we do it on a bipartisan level. We only have one planet. We don't have time. We cannot wait. We must make these advances now.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Now to you, Mr. Maher.
I like what was said, and again, this is the climate issue is a global issue, and what we can do in Congress is look at the United States and how we can be the leader in implementing solutions, and also how we can use the weight and power of the United States to lead and set that example for other countries. Here in California and our Central Valley, it's addressing proper management of our forests, all of our environmental goals and everything that we've accomplished. When we have these wildfire disasters, it sets us back 10, 15 years in the gains that we've achieved. And if we properly managed our forests, we wouldn't have insurance companies leaving us, so you can't even get an insurance policy for the people in those areas. But also we'd be increasing our groundwater sustainability. We would have more water going into our water tables instead of fueling the growth and now having fuel for fire. And then also how we manage the Delta and the wastewater treatment plants that are putting pollutions into the Delta and killing our fish. All of these solutions, including locks and looking forward into the future to the technologies that we have and implementing them now, is what Congress has to do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will go to question number 7. And Mr. Mayor, you will be up first. The question: in order to uphold the U.S. commitment to the Paris Climate Accords, the President has proposed the goals of reducing national greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, and the U.S. becoming carbon neutral by 2050. Do you agree with these goals? And if so, what policies would you support in order to achieve them? If you are not in agreement with these goals, what alternative goals do you suggest we strive towards?
Absolutely. So I think what we can do, and we look at France. What does France do where the Paris Climate Accords came from? Their nuclear power, and they utilize nuclear power and the advancements in nuclear energy. It's one of the greenest carbon neutral power sources out there. And if we do that, we're no longer having, that changes all the United States in a manner that is going to reduce our footprint at levels that I don't really think people realize. There won't be the clean coal burning anymore. There'll be clean energy. The U.S. military, I did this. I actually ran nuclear power facilities. And we even see in California where Gavin Newsom has extended the life of Diablo facility so we can maintain and have the energy infrastructure to provide the power that's going to be needed for increased electric vehicles. And looking towards existing solutions and then future technologies, that's one way to immediately, we can hit our goals just on how we do manage our national electrical grid and how we produce power. And then looking at some of the other advances since the original accord was signed, I'm excited to see what we're able to bring about here in this new Congress.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Wood?
Wonderful, thank you. I agree with these goals, and I believe it's so important to take a realistic look. We are 80% of our dependency is on fossil fuels, and we have to provide tools and supports for us to make these extraordinary gains that we have no choice but to make. For example, in my classroom, I know that I have the majority of my students are reading below grade level. And so I have to provide them with the supports they need in order to continue to become independent learners and stronger readers. I can't just slap down a book, War and Peace say, all right, you should be reading, so I need you to read. And I believe that's what we need to do here in moving toward reaching these goals. We have to, for example, when we are requesting people move to electric cars, if we don't have enough charging stations across just going up and down I-5, they can't efficiently get up and down the state. It doesn't make it efficient. They're not incentivized to do it. We have to bring, again, incentivize and reward, tax credits, all to make people want to go about and create this change. But it has to have supports with it to make it sustainable and intentional.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wood. Mr. Barkley?
I do not agree with these goals. We need to move towards negative carbon impact by the end of this decade. If we're still messing around with 50% reduction, the climate will continue to get worse, and the ice caps will continue to disappear, and eventually we will need draconian solutions like dams across the Golden Gate just for this part of the state, and Los Angeles will have its own problems. Stop messing around with political solutions. Move towards negative carbon impact now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barkley. And our final question, and we will start with you, Mr. Barkley. With regard to the climate crisis, what trusted resources do you utilize to inform your views and decisions?
Well, at the moment, I find you folks to be a trusted resource. And so I'm happy to sit here and listen to everything you have to say. But beyond that, CNN, MSNBC, various links on Facebooks, like the consideration of the California flooding risk brought by climate change, which moved it from an average of these massive floods statewide of once every 264 years. This study that just came out in Science moved it to 30 years. So I used to think, well, it's a serious problem what happened in 1861, 62, but it won't happen again in my lifetime. And I believe that has changed. That left a 300-mile long lake in the Central Valley, killed thousands of people, killed 800,000 heads of livestock, washed away almost every ferry and bridge that had been built over the previous 10 years. And the state was bankrupt and couldn't pay anybody for a year and a half. We need to address the flooding issues with the plan that I have on my website for 43 million acre feet of additional storage. We need to continue to examine these resources like Science and similar magazines and Time Magazine as a survey of them, and keep watching these things and listening to you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Wood?
I would, of course, always as a teacher, I am based all of my decisions on science and the experts in the field, folks like you, the EPA, the UC and California systems. I will depend on you and I will count on you to keep me informed in how we can best move this forward. I will promise you, I remember reading Director Comey's book, and he was talking about President Obama. And one of the things that struck him the most about his respect for the president was that President Obama would gather everyone around him, all different sources of information, different perspectives, different points of view, and they would all be based in information and data and science, and then he would make his decision. And that's what I promised you I will always do. I will always refer to the science, to the experts like you, and then make my best judgment in terms of what I think is best for our planet and best for the folks who have trusted me with their vote in the district. Okay,
thank you, Mrs. Wood. And Mr. Maher, you get to wrap this up.
Wonderful, thank you. So how I would stay involved is what I'm already doing, and that gets into my background being a student at Oxford University, from Harvard, John F. Kennedy School of Government, citizens climate lobby, groups like that, my involvement with the Sustainable Markets Initiatives, and my work already with the leaders in sustainable solutions here with Yosemite Clean Energy and Waste Fuel. It's staying actively and engaged. And also it's being engaged with the right also. This isn't just a partisan issue. This is, how do I take and communicate the information that is largely seen by people on the right as an only Democrat issue or ultra left issue. This is our planet, this is our country, and this is California, and we have to lead. So I'm also taking information from the right side, so I can communicate in a way that is effective and provides these pragmatic solutions, so we can all come together and actually address and solve these issues. And lastly, one of the groups, Jim Costa, actually signed a letter in support of something that Yosemite Clean Energy pushed forward through Congressman Doug LaMalfa. We had bipartisan support in increasing RINs credits and getting hydrogen added and gasification. So I've been behind the scenes working on that for a long time, and I'm just happy to be able to be a candidate here and hopefully bring everyone together so we can start accomplishing what all of us want to see done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this ends our questions from me, the moderator, but Manu has been gathering questions from our audience. I will turn it over to her. I hope some of you have participated. Manu?
Hello, I will now present a few questions submitted by members of our audience. The first question is, how would you propose that we address the logjam in Congress with regards to climate change solutions? And let's start with Ms. Wood.
I would address the logjam solution, again, just by bringing everyone to the table. This is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. And I think once we get more, we elect more politicians who are willing to do just that, who are willing to put aside party politics in order to do what's right for this country. As a junior high teacher, I've done a lot with restorative practices and restorative circles when I bring my students together. And I understand so much the power of listening. We've got to start listening to one another and not talking at each other. We've got to stop blaming one person or another. The blame game gets nobody a win. It finds no solutions. All it does is just keeping the wheels spinning and nothing moving forward. So I would be more than ready to use what I've learned from my junior high in dealing with the kiddos and finding that common ground and seeing the power again of listening to one another, all of us, because there's so much more. Truly, once we start listening, there's so much more that we have in common, which is the safety of our planet. And as Californians and as the Central Valley, leading the world in that fight.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Now we will move on to Mr. Barkley.
A few minutes ago, Mr. Mayor did a nice job of explaining what we need to do, and I thank him for that. We need to get together, we need to agree on things, and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maher, we'll finish up with you.
Absolutely. So how do we stop the logjam? It's by engaging both parties in a way that we can bring back pragmatic solutions that are going to actually solve these problems. And it's going to be through education. It's groups like your group. It's from high school. It's in college. It's bringing everyone to the table and saying, let's work together and discuss this as adults without slinging mud, without personal attacks, and say, here's the solution. And how do we implement the solution? And how can Congress make sure it's funded? And how can the states make sure the regulations are removed so we can actually get these solutions implemented and start addressing this issue? The main thing is it's education and opening up lines of communication and listening to each other, not demonizing each other, working together. So education, working together, and listening that's how we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now to our next question. Do you support the California high-speed rail? Why or why not? And Mr. Barkley, we'll begin with you.
Well, eventually we will need it. It seems to have been somewhat stalled lately, and I would like them to get off the stick and get it done. So to that extent, I support it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Well, at this point, how much money has been spent and what we have, I look at all that money and what we could have done for actual solutions for water solutions, for our valley solutions in what we're talking about climate right now. It's stalled. It is not completed. There is no plan anymore to connect us with Los Angeles. All the things that made me super excited about the high-speed rail all seem to be disappearing. So I would like to see answers on when is it going to be completed? Is it going to actually be high speed? Where is the energy provided for this? Is this going to be carbon neutral or carbon negative? And how is it going to actually support our rural communities and our disadvantaged communities that actually need to have more access to public transportation, not just the communities that it looks like it's serving? So those are the things that I want to see.
Thank you. Ms. Wood will finish up with you for this question.
Thank you. It is frustrating to see the expense and the time that has been put into something that is stalled. And it's that double-edged sword of we've put so much into it, and where do we go from here? When is this a priority? When, as we said, we have so many underserved communities who don't have potable drinking water. How does this positively affect the folks in the district who need our support and need our help? We do need to have questions answered. Will they be answered upon completion if we go ahead and move forward with the high-speed rail? We would have to look at the benefits and whether they outweigh the detriments. But the bottom line is, how can we best serve the folks in this district? And it's a very frustrating issue because of all that's gone into it, and what we're left with nothing right now. And I believe, again, there has to be accountability, and moving forward, it has to be a decision that is best for the folks here, the folks that are depending on us the most to make the right decisions for them.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. What is your stance on a tax on petroleum, methane gas, and coals at the wells and mines? Do you support increases of the gasoline tax in order to motivate people to burn less fossil fuels? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Maher.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I look at on this is holistically and across the nation. Right now, California is actually importing fossil fuels from outside of the state. We're dependent on foreign power, and we're dependent on, even for our electrical grid, on coal power. So we need to, number one, address this, because this is a global issue. This isn't just a California issue. If we increase for every gallon of gas that our refineries and we can do here in California, we are doing an 80% savings compared to the other states. So if we continue to increase our taxes on this, our economy is going to continue to drive to a halt. Instead of saying this is something that we need to look at phasing out and provide support and credits for the new industries. I talk to truckers right now. They're looking at moving out their whole fleets of trucking to another state where they don't have the same laws, and then California can't restrict them. They'll still drive into California. They'll still burn the same fossil fuels. So it has to be a compromise so we're able to actually meet our goals, not just push the businesses out so they don't have to follow the laws of California. And that's what has to happen.
Thank you. I'll move on to Ms. Wood.
I agree with Mr. Maher. We have to look at who is what we're detrimenting by implementing the gas tax. I believe we need to move forward with incentives that will, again, decrease our dependency on those fossil fuels. This is a global issue, and the prices are being affected not by just what we do here in the state. And we have to look at that. And I'm not sure that just a gas tax and penalizing certain people is the best way to go. I would have to look again fully at the numbers, but I believe it's more important for us to incentivize and to give credits and to give support for folks in terms of those that are paying for the higher gas that are struggling to do just that? How can we make it easier for them while still decreasing our dependency on the fossil fuels? But it's a global issue, and I'm not sure that just taxing it may be the best way for us to do it. I would have to look at it again, but I'm always moving towards incentivization and giving people credits and support in order able to bridge that gap between what they can afford and what they have to pay.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. We'll finish off with Mr. Barkley for this question.
Everything today has been about reducing combustion as a power source and increasing renewable energy. And that goes for this question of fossil fuels production in California as well. There was a lot of discussion over the summer about things we could do to reduce inflation. Well, the government could give away 1 million electric cars and collect the old cars. And since there was a inflation in the price of old cars and inflation in the price of gas, that would reduce the gas cost and the cost of used cars. And so then if you add the tax on top of that, with the price of gas dropping, it would not be noticeable. So we could do that. There are other things, but what the goal needs to be is to reduce combustion as an energy source. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to our next question. If there is insufficient lithium and other minerals for everyone to have an affordable electric car, do you support the expansion of public transportation with electric buses and rail? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Wood.
I absolutely do. I am a firm believer in public transportation. I know so many of my families in the school district where I teach depend on that. And if you've ever traveled to Europe, specifically Scotland, their public transportation system is incredible. You don't need a car. You can get anywhere you need to go on that. And I believe we need to build up our public transportation systems, especially being with using clean energy electric transportation. So I would support that 100%. Yes.
Thank you. Next, we will have Mr. Barkley.
When I was much younger, you could go to any small town in California, for instance, get on a Greyhound bus and go anywhere in the whole country. That is mostly gone. Instead, we're spending huge amounts on rapid transit system and on rail. All of that money first should be going to reestablish the Greyhound system throughout the country, and with electric buses, it would be great. And the most important thing is that this serves these systems like Greyhound serve mostly poor people, and now those people, unless they borrow a car or buy a car that they can't afford, can't get anywhere. They're stuck in the small towns. They can't find a job in the next town. They can't do anything. So we need to re-examine all of our mass transit options and make sure Greyhound is added back to it and properly funded with a federal Greyhound and state Greyhound solution. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And to wrap up this question, Mr. Maher?
Absolutely. So you brought up lithium and you brought up some of the other rare earth metals and materials that are needed to produce batteries for this public infrastructure. My concern on that and for using batteries for electric vehicles is really the modern day slavery that's going on, that's used and harvesting all of the materials needed for batteries. That's why I'm a huge proponent of hydrogen that can be made here locally through our farm wood waste and from our forests, which Yosemite Clean Energy is doing. The other one is the increasing of electric flight for mass transportation. That's something that can be available and is already doing and working on right now. I just in San Francisco at an aviation conference on this. Hydrogen power for electric flight, hydrogen for long haul trucking, and in putting money in for that infrastructure. The disadvantaged communities, even if we give them a free electric vehicle that has batteries, there's a huge cost associated with upgrading the electrical infrastructure in their home to be able to even charge the vehicle. And then even right now with our homelessness crisis, we're seeing our charging stations being attacked and cut the cables so they can use it to sell to support their habits. Where there's also battery degradation. So your range decreases after you have your car for about 5 or 6 years. And these car batteries cost $20,000 to replace. That's a huge cost. But if we have hydrogen, which already works, you're able to fill up your tank, drive Greyhound buses or trucks, and your range never.
Thank you. That's all for your time, but great answer. And then for our next question, here we have it. Will your campaign contributors tolerate support you may give to adaptive changes in our economy that call for periods of sacrifice by the American people, including periods of large unemployment, lower wages and salaries, many carbon-dependent businesses closing, and the unavailability of products and food? Mr. Maher, we'll begin with you.
I'll be quick on this one. I don't think so, and I don't think any of us need to be thinking that. I think these solutions are available without having to have the negative repercussions that you just mentioned. If we come together and start speaking about this, start listening about these issues and implementing these solutions, we're not going to see that happen. I wouldn't support that. I don't think anybody would be supporting moving backwards. We need to be moving forward.
Thank you. And Mr. Barkley, you're next.
Would you ask the question again, please?
Yes. Will your campaign contributors tolerate support you may give to adaptive changes in our economy that call for periods of sacrifice by the American people, including periods of large unemployment, lower wages and salaries, many carbon-dependent businesses closing, and the unavailability of products and food?
Probably not.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wood?
I do not support us having to go backwards or having to sacrifice. I believe there's so much more we can do moving forward. And again, even if the businesses, carbon businesses, have to go start not employing people, we can put solutions in place so that they're not out of work. I don't think that's never a solution that I would support at all. I never would support moving backward when there's so many available avenues for us to move forward. I believe in the true grit and determination and ingenuity of the American people and in the folks here in our Central Valley and our areas. I don't believe that's something we would need to do. I think we can always be moving forward.
Thank you. And for our next question, if the drought becomes permanent and there is insufficient water for Central Valley agribusiness, will you continue to value the health of the San Joaquin Sacramento Delta by seeing that it has fresh water to sustain this ecosystem as an estuary? Ms. Wood, we'll begin with you.
Great question. And again, I think we have to continue to look at where we are. You're talking about a should have or what if happens. And I always will want to make sure that whatever decision we have moving forward is one that is best for the folks here in the district. And I, of course, would want to always preserve the species and the preciousness of the Delta, but we also have to look at options in terms of if it comes down to feeding children and because of the drought causes us to move further into food insecurity, that's not okay as well. My priority will always be to balance both. But I have to say, I will never allow children to go hungry or to us to have an extreme food insecurity issue when there's options we can have. And I will always defend our students, our children, and the ability for us to feed them.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Barkley.
On my website is a massive California water plan that provides 43 million acre feet of additional storage and 3 new conveyances. And the purpose of that plan is to reduce the periodic flooding risk in California, and as a side effect, to save enough water during times of plenty for every drought that we've had. This would move, the conveyances would move all of the flow out of the Delta except for what the Delta needs. The California Water Plan would connect to it. It would use the West Side conveyance system, which has been in the planning stages since the 1920s, and it is well thought out. Additional storage south of the Delta will reduce the earthquake risk of interruption. We need this kind of a plan to solve our drought needs, our flooding needs, and the needs of the other 6 states in northern Mexico on the Colorado River. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, we'll wrap this up with you.
Absolutely. Is existing plans out there that will be able to deal with this so we're not faced with that dire situation where we're in such a negative drought. If we actually invest in our infrastructure, we will be able to have fresh water going into the Delta. And the Delta originally was a body of water. It would be salt water that would go all the way up to Sacramento and would flow back in the very, very beginnings. Where it is now, we have to be making sure that we're not polluting the Delta with our effluent from wastewater plants, bringing about these plans that were just talked about so we can increase our storage. And then also look at countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel that have they're turned desert into abundant water. And using nuclear power, sustainable power, we're able to make through desalinization water to feed and provide for every person in the Central Valley, clean, good water. And I like to see those things happen and money invested in those technologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have now come to the end of our program. We would like to thank Mr. Mayor, Ms. Wood, and Mr. Barkley for their participation. I believe that your participation in this event is a very important first step in bringing climate and the environment to the forefront of the government. We would also like to thank the audience for taking the time out of their day to attend this event. Please continue to seek out information as to how your elected officials are approaching these crucial issues.
Thank you, Mayo. Well, it has been a pleasure working with you and the other young people and the students who really worked hard to put this forum together. Climate and the environment are top issues for young people. They are engaged, informed, and they will be voting. Thank all of you for joining us for this candidates forum. We hope that you found it informative. Thank you to Citizens Climate Lobby Fresno, Fresno State Sustainability Club, Buchanan High School's Ecolibrium Project, and CMAC TV. And remember, don't forget to vote on November 8th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Juanita Stevenson, and you have a great day.
We love Earth Day, but our planet is too big for just one day. That's why this October 22nd, we're celebrating a second Earth Day. The November elections are one of the most critical times for our little blue dot. That's when we'll vote to seriously address climate change, or we'll put it off for 2 more years. For many people and species, the latter is not an option. So this October, celebrate Earth Day 2.0 by bringing climate to the election conversation. Let's get every candidate on the record for climate action. Let's get every citizen to vote like the Earth depends on it. Let's put people in office who will choose planet over party, people over power, and long-term prosperity over short-term gains. You are Earth's voice. Let's make sure you're heard.